What's the Chinese are doing, you think, on the backside of the moon? Do you have any insights in that?
They are going to have a lander on the far side of the moon, which is the side that's always in dark. We're not planning to go there.
And why not? And what's the benefit of doing so?
We don't know what's on the backside of the moon, so...
Greetings to the brightest audience in the country. This is Real Science Radio. I'm Fred Williams.
And I'm Doug McBurney, Bible student, science geek, amateur comedian. Fred, it is great to be back with you talking about real science on Friday.
Doug, we've got some interesting items in the news. It's been a while since we've covered some science stories that are current.
Yes.
And so what do we have going on?
Well, we're going to talk about some human brains.
Human brains, okay.
Human brains, yeah. And some eggshells. Got some eggshells.
Dinosaur eggshells that have some interesting material in them. Yeah.
Yes. And we'll talk about, we're going to talk about some mathematics. Now, I don't want to drive people away. It's going to be interesting stuff about math.
Yes.
Right? We've got not only some relative mathematics when it comes to money and time and things like that, but also a new way to count, which I wish I would have found that when I was back in algebra class. I wish somebody would have clued me in on a new way to count. But that'll be some interesting stuff.
Yep.
We'll talk about aliens. We got aliens.
Yeah.
Should have done that up front, Fred. Should have got the aliens out there first.
And, we've got a story from NASA and the dark side of the moon. That one's going to be, that one's pretty interesting. We get to find out about what our tax dollars are paying for some of these people who work for NASA.
Right. And we may have time. We may or may not have time to get some of the to some of the news about artificial intelligence and what some of the leaders in the artificial intelligence community think about where that's taking civilization in general. But Fred, first, I want to start with mathematics, because I want to get that out of the way, make sure we can keep the audience on board, even though we're talking about math. I don't know about you, Fred, but I've been hearing since the Reagan administration that Social Security is going to go broke. Have you been hearing that for a while? Oh,
absolutely. Yep.
Right? Social Security was supposed to be broke by the time I was 17. But for whatever reason, it hasn't gone broke, and it turns out the reason why is because the government has raised taxes and borrowed extraordinary amounts of money. Extraordinary. Yep. How extraordinary? Well, I forget what the deficit is right now. And by the way, the deficit is how much money we're in debt this year, right? The debt's a different thing. That's like the total, right? That's like your house mortgage is your debt, and it's your house payment that's your deficit, right? So the deficit, I think this year is over $1 trillion. The deficit.
Just a trillion. What's a trillion between
that's what we're
friends?
Running. Now, we do have a $20 trillion economy. I mean, at least that's what we're told, and so that's a significant economy.
Yep.
But I think people may not really comprehend how much a trillion is. And I can tell you, Fred, after reading this little chart, I definitely did not comprehend what a trillion is. So let me just quickly say, 1,000 is 10 100s. A million is 1,000 thousand. A billion is 1,000 million. A trillion is 1,000 billion. And so you think, oh, okay, well, but wait a second. That really doesn't say where we are. Listen to this. So 1 million seconds ago, if you're listening to the show live, 1 million seconds ago was May 13th. 1 million seconds. 1 billion seconds ago was 1993. 1 trillion seconds ago was 30,000 BC.
30,000 BC.
30,000
Long
BC.
before the Earth was even created.
That's right. That's so, Fred, our national debt has taken us back into nothingness, emptiness. It's a vacuous black void.
So 1 trillion seconds ago is 30,000 BC. 1 billion seconds ago, just 1 billion. What's 1 billion?
That's like
Tesla
30
has
years.
1 billion. That goes back to when Clinton won the presidency.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. Right. Well, I think Social Security was supposed to go broke then, if I remember correctly. But they've managed to. So just a little bit of relative mathematics, just to clue everyone in. And by the way, I just read an article this morning, Fred, that there's a new plan now to preserve Social Security for another 20 or 30 years, and it involves some trillions of dollars, and now I know why. Because that's a lot of money. Yeah, they're going to raise taxes on the rich.
Yep,
which is
exactly.
anyone who's a millionaire, which means if you make $1 million during your entire working life, you're now a rich millionaire.
Yep.
Something like that. But anyway, Fred, let's leave the economics aside, although economics is considered something of a science.
Yeah.
Something of a science. It's a little shaky. I'm not sure I would call it a science. But.
Yeah, so speaking of your interesting fact of math, how about our interesting fact of the week?
Okay.
Are you
ready?
ready?
Ready for the interest? Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So here we go. What fish starts off as a male?
A male fish.
The fish starts off as male and then can become female after it's already born. It starts off.
Okay, there's the hook. I thought you threw me an easy one. What starts out as a boy? A boy. But no, there's always got to be a catch with your interesting fact of the week. So a fish that can start out a male but then become a female.
Correct.
A Michael Jackson fish.
Think of a circus fish.
The clownfish.
There you go.
Well, now you can't give me applause on that because you gave me the answer. But wait a second. Was the clownfish the fish in Finding Nemo?
It indeed was.
And that was voiced over by?
Actually, I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. It
Who?
was a woman who, well, she didn't actually become a man. That was before they did that. She was just a I can't even remember her name. Some from the 90s who nobody can even remember her name was the voice of the clownfish on Finding Nemo, and that's more publicity than we should even give that person. So I think we should just move on.
Okay. Well, hey, Doug. So this reminded me actually of our man in the street interviews that we did down in Dallas. Remember that a couple weeks ago? Well, I guess it's been about a month now. And, we asked the question, is it wrong for a man to get an abortion? Is that how we asked that?
Should men be able to get abortions?
Yeah. Should men be able to get an abortion? And remember, there's those two ladies, and one of them said, don't you know that we all start off as female?
That's right.
I'd never heard that before. Oh, okay.
So, we're all female when we're first created.
Now, I wonder where she got, there's got to be something in high school biology that implies.
Yeah, she got that from public school probably somewhere. Since we all evolved from, are all evolved and we're related to all the animals, there are animals that start off as female. So somehow she probably heard from some silly public school biology teacher that, humans start off as female, which is totally not true. At conception, our sex is determined at conception, as Nicole rightly pointed out to these people. So those were really interesting interviews on the street. I encourage people to go back and watch those shows.
We're going to do some more Man on the Street interviews in the not too distant future.
That's right.
We have some. We're plotting and scheming right now.
Are you going to be wearing your skinny white jeans? Or no way, you're a white man in skinny jeans.
I don't need to be lectured by a white man in skinny jeans about what I can do with my body.
I forget who it was in the audience pointed out that skinny jeans went out of style some time back.
They did. One of our listeners,
I'm not sure,
emailed us in and said, "Hey, look, the skinny jeans, according to Gen Z, they're out of style now, like a year ago."
So I wasn't aware, and so I'm not sure where to go fashion-wise, but I can rest assured that I will wear something that's not distasteful. I'll try to do that, but that's all I can commit to. But we are planning some man on the street interviews, and looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So again, I encourage people to go back and watch that. That was the second series of Man on the Streets we did at the homeschool conference, I believe. So both of those shows are really good. So Doug, which news story do you want to start with?
The Eggshells was the most fascinating latest headline that I saw.
Yep.
Really interesting stuff because, Real Science Radio does have the repository. Bob Enyart built the repository of probably the largest nexus of dinosaur soft tissue information on the internet. And we're going to have to add this to that nexus of information, which is at rsr.org/dino.
Yes. And I believe Brian Thomas is managing that list now. So Dr. Brian Thomas of ICR. So this
Praise the Lord. Thank you, Brian.
Yes. So this particular news story is titled "Fossilized Dinosaur Eggshells Can Preserve Amino Acids, the Building Blocks of Proteins Over Millions of Years." Millions of years,
wow.
Doug. So they're
eggshells. Wow.
Yes, with amino acids. So amino acids are like the letters that, tell you what the protein's going to be. So you've got DNA that, encodes for the amino acids, and the amino acids are what are the building blocks for proteins. So they're finding amino acids in these dinosaur eggshells. And they have to, of course, believe that they were preserved over millions of years. That somehow these amino acids are still there. And, of course, that's not true. Dinosaurs were created, what, Doug, on day 6? So they were,
that's right.
That's like, 6 to 8,000 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. So they're not millions of years old. We have tons of stories and historical accounts of dinosaurs living with man, and now we've got soft tissue, and now we've got amino acids from these dinosaur eggshells. And of course...
Well, wait a minute, Fred. Wait a minute. You're saying that eggshells don't have some magical ability to preserve amino acids for millions of years? Because I think that's what the scientists in the article said.
Well, so the article mentions how eggshell calcite is a closed system. So in other words, it's pretty immune to having outside influences. And so what they find in there, they can say, hey, we know it came from the dinosaur rather than outside contamination. For so long, they've tried to blame these anomalies on contamination. They still do that
right
as often as they can. Here's a case where they admit that, hey, these things are the original amino acids of, these dinosaur eggs. So how can those still be there, despite the fact that scientists will tell you that, amino acids, they can't last millions of years, but now they think they can only because they assume deep time, millions of years.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, Fred, it's not only scientists telling us that amino acids can't last. There's experimental evidence. There's proof that amino acids can't last more than a few thousand years. I mean, it's just and Fred, an egg, by the way, an eggshell is an extraordinarily sophisticated design that works incredibly well at keeping in an egg. Like the egg, the yolk and the white, it all stays inside the eggshell. But I think giving the eggshell credit for preserving amino acids over millions of years that's a bridge too far. I mean, the egg is amazing. Don't get me wrong. The eggshell's amazing, but it's not that amazing.
Yeah. And, well, we had Dr. Royal Truman on the show before, and he's also got some really good articles that are fairly recent in Creation, the Journal of Creation, and you can find those at creation.com. But, Dr. Truman mentioned how these amino acids, they all come in left-handed shape, either right or left-handed, and when something's alive, they're all left-handed, and then an organism dies and they start to shift to like 50-50 between right and left-handed. And so These particular amino acids, they claim in the article that they're fully racemized, which means they've fallen back to this 50-50 state. But racemization itself, they claim, has a shelf life of about, you get different reports in the science media, but 3 million years. And so Dr. Truman has shown that it's not hard to get things to racemize right away after something dies. It's pretty easy. And we know with racemization, right, whenever they try origin of life experiments, they've always get these things fully racemized. They're not all left-handed. And it was real interesting. Dr. Truman said that even if you gave them the left-handed amino acids, over time, they're going to racemize before you get other things you need for life to exist. So it's all serious, hard problems for evolutionists to solve. They can't solve them. It just argues against naturalistic origins. And it's just fun having these articles come across the news, Doug, because it's just more evidence that creation is true, evolution isn't true. It all fits our worldview, and they're left trying to explain all this stuff. So,
okay. Well, Fred, I saw that you posted up this headline in our notes: 12,000-year-old preserved human brains defy soft tissue decay assumptions. And I just want to let the audience know that secular media publishers, they are attracted to any headline that has any amount of years over 10,000. So here we go, 12,000 years. Yep. They love that. Anything over 10,000 years, they want to get that out there on the headline because it's just another little attack against young Earth, creationism, and the fact that the Bible tells us that the Earth is definitely less than 10,000 years old. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. But what's the deal with the human brains here? 12,000-year-old preserved human brains.
Well, so they defy soft tissue decay assumptions. So they're finding brains that aren't fully decayed. They expected, material like your brain to decompose a lot more rapidly than things like bones and teeth and stuff like that, where these brains are outlasting those. That's what I would assume. Yeah, that you would assume that.
Yeah.
But, there's this team from the University of Oxford, and they identified more than 4,400 preserved human brains dating back as far as 12,000 years ago using their flawed dating methods. Yeah. And the results contradict previous evidence that the human brain is among the first organs to decay after death. So, pretty interesting. The brain is just less susceptible to decay after you die.
Well, Fred, modern science has been watching the rates of decay of various tissues for, let's say, a few hundred years. Right? Let's say since the alleged Enlightenment. So how is it that we didn't already know this? Wouldn't you think that the experts would already know what decomposes at what rate? And there should be a chart that we should know all this because of the experts. Are you telling me, Fred, that there's things that the experts don't know that they're finding out now?
Well, there's a lot of things they don't know. Is because they start with assumptions of evolution in deep time, and so they miss out on stuff like this until they come across it, and then they have to report on it. And like you said, they're going to jam in the 12,000 years to make sure that they're not catering to the young Earth. I mean, it's just like the last article we talked about, which was a totally dishonest headline when it said that the building blocks of proteins are over 1 million years in these dinosaur eggshells. Well, here they're doing the same thing with this whole 12,000-year-old. They got to jam that in, like you said. And it's just typical of secular media to do this kind of stuff. But it is interesting, though, that human brains can, once they just don't decay as fast, which is interesting. Not sure how we... I'm not, so Doug, from a creationist Christian point of view, is there a way that we would expect that to happen? I can't think of one, but,
Man, I got to tell you, Fred, I would think that the brain is a big, soft, mushy thing, and I would think that big, soft, mushy things decay faster than hard, solid things. But I'm not a scientist. I certainly haven't sat around pondering the rates of decay
I wonder
of various mammalian tissues.
I wonder if you've gone to public schools and you've been so indoctrinated and believe in evolution, if your brain is mushier. Maybe those decay even faster because they're already really mushy.
That's it, Fred. These were creationist brains that were just held together more firmly, is what happened.
Well, speaking of speaking of mushy brains, I want to get into this story from NASA, and it was reported in the Washington Examiner. And,
oh, no.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of, we were just talking about the government spending money to save Social Security. Tell us, Fred, about this guy's on the payroll, from what I understand.
He is. It's scary. So the headline of the article from the Washington Examiner is, NASA administrator has no idea why China is going to the far side of the moon that is, quote, always in dark.
Oh, so what? Wait a minute. That's not even proper grammar. Always in dark?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Doug, we got to play a brief part of the clip from this guy from NASA. His name's Bill Nelson. And I like what this one person, Film Lad, is a guy on Twitter, and he wrote this. Bill Nelson, professional idiot in charge of NASA, thinks the far side of the moon is dark, implying that's why we're not going there for that reason. So he says, in case you're wondering why we're not back on the moon yet. And so let's play this clip really quick.
What's the Chinese are doing, you think, on the backside of the moon? Do you have any insights in that?
They are going to have a lander on the far side of the moon, which is the side that's always in dark. We're not planning to go there.
And why not? And what's the benefit of doing so?
We don't know what's on the backside of the moon, so...
Okay, so it's the side that's always in dark. Okay. This is the spokesperson for NASA. Wow. Okay, so Fred, just for for the public school kids out there who likely haven't been taught this, the far side of the moon isn't always dark. I know there's a Pink Floyd song to that effect, I think, Doug. The dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
Well, the far side of the moon gets the equal amount of sunlight as the near side. It's just that from Earth, we always see the near side because of, tidal locking. The moon's locked us, so we always see the near side going around. Doug, that's our tax dollars hard at work.
Okay, and so just the audience may not know Bill Nelson, but it looks like he was elected to Congress from the state of Florida. He was also shot into space on a rocket. He went into space as the first government bureaucrat to be shot into space. And so there you have it. So he's actually been to space and he still doesn't know what's going on.
So this is Bill Nelson's been to space. Okay.
He's been to space, but obviously there was no IQ requirement to make that trip. He went up on the space shuttle. Yeah. Yeah, he was classified as superfluous payload on one of the Columbia missions there. So there you go. Your tax dollars at work, the dark side of the moon.
I got to share this.
Bill Nelson.
From the same article, one person on Twitter said, if Nelson and Sheila Jackson Lee did a podcast about space, I'd definitely listen. So if people remember Sheila Jackson Lee, she's the one who, when we had the Mars rover, land on Mars, and she said, "Hey, where's the American flag?"
It's just classic.
Oh man, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this happened. She was attending the Discovery launch, and she was in the news for asking if the cameras used on the Mars probe could pick up the U.S. flag left there by American astronauts. By Neil Armstrong. Well, sorry, but we have not sent a man to Mars yet, but anyways.
That's almost as bad as Hank Johnson, afraid that Guam was going to tip over as the sea level rises and global warming. And that's where the flag was. It was on Guam.
He thought it was going to tip over?
He said Guam's going to tip over because of global warming. Hank Johnson, who nobody knows where he is anymore. He's probably leading some government agency. I think he was a congressman or something like that.
Yep.
So he's probably in charge of something important at this point.
So continuing on the vein of mushy brains, there's this story about artificial intelligence and how AI could explain why we're not meeting any aliens. Wild study proposes. This is from Science Alert. So, how, Doug, could AI explain why we're not meeting any aliens? Why are we not encountering aliens?
Well, now, and if folks in the audience are familiar with the Fermi Paradox, the Fermi Paradox is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's stating that we should be meeting aliens, we should be encountering aliens because statistically there should be lots of them, but there is absolutely zero, there's a total lack of any evidence that there are any, and we've never met any. Why is that?
Yeah, even though most
and you're saying it might be AI.
Yeah, well, and most people believe in aliens. In fact, our man on the street interviews that one guy who was a Christian. He's like, yeah, I believe in aliens, and he was really, I know, I've seen the evidence for him, and there isn't any evidence for aliens. It's all nonsense. But anyways, yeah, Doug, that's exactly right about the Fermi Paradox. So we're not meeting aliens because AI on these civilizations eventually took over, and you had a Skynet situation, and Terminator just wiped them all out. I mean, all these Terminators running around out there. So, Doug, why aren't we meeting Terminator? Why isn't Arnold Schwarzenegger? I'll be back.
Yeah. Wouldn't their AI civilization come and get us if they...
Exactly. If they're going to wipe out their civilization and they're getting AI's getting out of control and really smart and, do all these wonderful things, why wouldn't we meet the AI from these planets? But anyways, just a silly headline.
Well, when you brought up the fact that we haven't seen any aliens and it might be related to AI, I was thinking it might be that the aliens have started monitoring our media, and the more AI we generate, the less interesting we become, and they're just like, well, I don't think we want to go talk to those guys. AI-generated chatter, let's just move on, and the aliens just go somewhere else. Look for some original material.
Yeah, Hawking said that we need to avoid aliens because they would be bad for us. They would destroy us. So, okay.
Yeah. And now, of course, Stephen Hawking now, no longer an atheist.
No.
From what we understand, having now crossed over into eternity, and from what I understand, his knees bowed. From what I understand, even though he was healthy enough to bow his knee, and confess that Jesus Christ is Lord.
All knees shall bow. That's so true. So, Doug, let's switch now to more firmed up brains that'll last a lot longer because they've got more wisdom. How about, I wanted to mention, on June 6th, there's a Hydroplate theory talk in Houston.
Hey!
So we want to make sure that those listening either on a radio broadcast or on YouTube to check out this Hydroplate conference. So we'll provide a link for it, and it's let's see.
It's at
the
Houston's
Greater
First
Houston
Baptist Church.
Yeah. And the website is ghcaonline.com, and that's the Greater Houston Creation Association. And, by the way, Doug.
Houston First Baptist Church on D-Day, the 6th of June.
Oh, that's right.
7 p.m.
The 6th of June, D-Day. So, Doug, by the way, on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so because that actually helps us and it gets us exposed to more people across the YouTube universe. We recently passed 500,000 views on YouTube. So
all right.
Our YouTube audience is growing, and we appreciate your support. And if you can, subscribe or share the YouTube links for your favorite shows on Real Science Radio. We've got them categorized now. You can go to our channel and find shows that talk about the hydroplate theory, talk about genetics, dinosaurs.
Yes.
Our man on the street interviews are all categorized now. Makes it easy for you to navigate around the YouTube channel. So.
Yes. So subscribe or just send money. If you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy the broadcast, go to the website, rsr.org. Check out our products. We got a ton of great stuff. Entertaining, great gifts, great stuff for the homeschool kids. Help keep us on the air. So if and subscribe and send money. How about that? Yeah, we'll ask people to do double duty. It's not that hard to subscribe. You just click a button.
Yeah.
So.
One of the misunderstandings I had was that radio shows, that they would pay you, but that's not the way it works, especially when you're a Christian. When you're a Christian channel and a creationist, we have to pay the radio station to be on the airwaves. And so we actually have to have a budget for that, and it's not cheap to air on Colorado's most powerful radio station, KLTT, the 20,000 watt, 50,000 watt.
50,000 watts,
I gotta
20,000
get 50,000 watts.
Come on. And so we're not able, because we're Christians, we're not hawking merchandise. We're not selling prosperity or miracles. We're not even promising anyone a really good time or even an easy time of it if you're a Christian.
Yep.
Certainly not promising anyone's going to get rich or anyone's going to get healed. And so there's not a lot of money in just preaching the straight up gospel that, we're all sinners and we need Jesus Christ in order to be saved. And yep. we try to bring scientifically interesting topics to the airwaves that point to Jesus Christ so that we can, the whole point though is to tell you about Jesus Christ because you're a sinner and you're on your way to hell and Jesus Christ can save you from your sins. All you need to do is believe. That's the whole point. And there's just not a lot of money in that, so we need your help.
But we do promise you to bring you the truth. And we're not infallible, Doug. If we say something on the air that's wrong, we're going to correct it. We're not going to be stubborn and just hold to a view because we're embarrassed that we were wrong. We want to bring you what we believe is factually correct information. And, Bob had an errata page on Real Science Radio where if he made a mistake on air or later learned, hey, this thing wasn't quite true the way I portrayed it, it turns out I misunderstood this. Well, he would post that on the website. Well, we're doing the same. We want to make sure that everything we tell you is the absolute truth of what the data shows. And again, there's occasions that we might say something incorrectly or misinterpret some data. We will make sure that we correct that. So we want you to know that you're getting the unfiltered truth through Real Science Radio on both science and whenever we touch on Scripture and the Bible, because they tie together very well. The Bible, while not a science book, it's always scientifically accurate. And we're here to bring about the fullness of the Gentiles, Doug. So the sooner we do that, the sooner we're out of here. And we want to reach people. So that's why we want you to subscribe and share the channel with others and get the truth out there. So. And there's a lot of atheists that are watching our show. We know that from the comments we're getting on YouTube, and that's a good thing because we're planting seeds. So we want atheists to come to our side because, to fall into the hands of the living God is a terrible thing. So you want to be on the right side.
Yeah, because you're on your way straight to hell with jet rockets because you're a filthy, low-down sinner. And how do I know that? Because I'm that too. I realize that.
Yeah.
And that's what we want you to realize so that you can realize you need a Savior. Now, and speaking of getting out of here, Fred, there's more and more reasons to want to leave, especially if you watch the news and you see what's happening in society. And as you look around, you start, there's a lot of reasons to want to get out of here. And for me, one of them is artificial intelligence. I'm repulsed by everything around artificial intelligence when it comes to the media and entertainment. I believe that artificial intelligence is extraordinarily valuable in making mundane tasks more efficiently executed. So there is a lot of value to artificial intelligence for things that we would rather not waste our time thinking about because they're mundane and repetitious and things like that. Yep. But as far as art and literature and music and philosophy and anything else that actually involves creativity and thinking, I'm repulsed by the idea that anyone would want to replace it with AI. If you want to replace it with AI, you have a problem. Maybe you're lazy. I don't know why anyone would want to replace actual paintings with AI generated. Why would you want to do that? So anyway,
I will say this though, Doug. I will say this: at least the AI paintings that are developed or images, compare that to these pictures. I don't know if you remember, it was on the backside of a Creation magazine. It was this painting, and all it was splashes here and there. And you get these liberals, look at that painting. It is so, look at the details over here. Oh, and that gives me the right mood to realize that the stars are certain aligned here. Oh, and the artist must have been thinking this when he did that. Well, guess what? The painting was made by a chimpanzee. So at least AI kind of wins that battle, okay?
At least they're trying to make the animal or the flowers or the fruit look like animals, flowers, or fruit.
Yeah, it came, the AI is pulling stuff from actual art that people have done, and then it kind of makes its own version. And as Daniel Hedrick has said, we've had him on some artificial intelligence shows, and we'll probably have him on at some time in the future again, of course, to get an update on AI. But AI has its obvious biases. You put in questions, and it's going to give you the left point of view, because the left point of view is so prevalent across the internet, across all the circuitry that stores all the information, the bias and the filters that go into promoting, like things we've talked about today. A 10,000, 12,000-year-old human brain, which we know isn't true, millions of years of amino acids surviving in dinosaur eggshells. It's all, AI sees that because it's using information from the web, and then you get this promotion of the left-wing point of view, the George Soros point of view. So,
well, and so one of the reasons I'm so repulsed by AI is because it's been so obviously managed and built and created by leftists. And so I've got a story that made all the wire services. I got this one down off the Times of India. The godfather of AI. The godfather of AI. Let's see. It's not James Brown. Who is it? It's a fella named Geoffrey Hinton. And I think if you're into AI, or if you're familiar with the history of AI, you would be familiar with Geoffrey Hinton. He's been nicknamed the godfather of AI. Ow! Wow! That was my James Brown. He says that once AI is actually deployed, he's calling on the governments of the world to implement a universal basic income, because he believes AI will put so many people out of work that everyone's going to be poor and destitute, and they're going to need to be saved by a socialist government.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say to Geoffrey Hinton, you're a fool. You're a child. You're so stupid that the fact that you are the godfather of anything that's going to dominate anything in industry or anything else is embarrassing. Do you know how many dumb, stupid people have said over the past 500 years that this technology or that technology is going to upset the economy and people are going to be destitute? You know how many people have said that, Jeffrey? A lot of people, and they've all been laughed at and mocked by reasonable, sensible people who know that your invention is not so amazing that it's going to upset everything that God set in motion 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. You're not going to do it, Jeff. And we don't need the government to come and save us. We already have a savior. And those of us who are put out of work by AI, Jeff, will figure out something more interesting to do. That's all.
Yeah, this Hinton guy's a real bozo, pushing the socialist agenda. So, Doug, I wanted to get to this other headline. It's from Quantum Magazine, and that's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, online magazine. It's a secular magazine, but they've got a lot of great stuff that we as creationists can use. They don't realize that they kind of like work for creation scientists instead of work for Walt Brown. In this case, they're working for creation scientists.
They print a lot of the truth.
They do. It's really interesting stuff. This particular headline is titled, "Computer Scientists Invent an Efficient New Way to Count." And what they do...
Fred, now I know you're a computer scientist. But to a layman, I read that and I think, well, wait a minute. I already have an efficient way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why would I need this, Fred?
Well, so what they're doing is they're making use of randomness. Now, atheists will love that because they'll try to say, hey, randomness can create information, which it can't. But basically, you can use randomness to arrive at something more efficiently, and this is what happened. So there's a team, and they created what's basically a simple algorithm for estimating large numbers of distinct objects in a stream of data. The example they have here is, to illustrate the problem, is imagine you're listening to the audiobook of Hamlet, something I would never do. I mean, Shakespeare bores me to tears. Sorry, Shakespeare fans out there. But there are 30,557 words in the play, so how many of those words are distinct? And to find out, you could listen to the play and then jot down each time you hear the word and, take a note of it, and then you can start adding things up. And in computer software, we would use like what's called a dictionary to do all this work. Well, you're going to run out of memory depending on how big your data is. So they came up with a method where you're only going to you're going to go through 100 words, and then you're going to flip a coin and then select the next, reduce those words to 50, and then run them up to 100 again while you're going through the play, and then flip coins when you get to the same word, reduce them down again. What basically you're doing is you're using randomness or a stochastic process to zero in on a really good estimate of how many times that word appears in the play. Because over time, the odds are going to work towards establishing the pattern. And I think the accuracy was within 3 to 5%. So it's a really efficient way to determine how many times those words occur. And what's interesting, Doug, is God uses randomness in our immune system. A lot of people may not realize that, but our immune response, there's a stochastic process that God designed because there's so many pathogens that our body has to fight in such a huge wide variety. You couldn't possibly store all the potential types of pathogens in the human genome, in our immune system. And so there's a stochastic process that's at work. It's really elaborate, and it's really just mind-boggling. And then it allows our immune system to attack pathogens and eventually find the right combination and kill whatever is the immune system is attacking. And then it stores that in memory. It's going to remember that one. That's how vaccines can be useful, because they can get the immune system to attack something, and then it remembers that particular item it attacked, and so then the immune system acts better against it. So God uses randomness in his design. And engineers, we can leverage randomness like they did in this article that Quantum Magazine mentions. And we've done somewhat, arguably similar techniques and other methods where we don't have a lot of memory to use, and so we can use a stochastic process to narrow down or to find out what something is based on odds on, you're sitting here, say you're randomly going through a huge amount of data, but you're only going to randomly select certain parts to find out how much of something exists. I mean, we do the same thing with polls and whatnot, for elections. You can't poll everybody, but you can poll a sample, and as long as you're smart about your sample, you can get a reasonable estimate of what you're trying to determine. So election polls, I know people can criticize them, and a lot of times they are flawed. But generally speaking, if you do a really good poll and you're taking your statistics correctly, you can get to within an accuracy, 3 to 5%. So, anyways, there is design behind using randomness, but that's the whole point. It's information. You have to have intelligence behind the use of using randomized data. So this study from Quantum Magazine, these are engineers, they're computer scientists that are using it. It's not anything naturalistic leading to the results. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Right. I guess it depends on what you're counting, how much time you have, and how much memory you have. 1, 2, 3, that's pretty inefficient now that I think about it that way. So I wasn't aware of the immune system. Maybe I had been aware, but I had forgotten. But it is amazing, and so these guys are imitating God when they don't even know they're imitating God, and they would only find out later that, oh yeah, God already did that.
Exactly.
But that's really cool that you figured that out. It's because God made you.
Yeah. And like I've said before, Doug, there's three kinds of people in the world: those who can count and those who can't. So, Doug, it was a lot of fun doing this show, but we're out of time. So, for my co-host, Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.